Nostalgia Wash is about a movie that I'm sure most of you in my age range and a little bit older probably know and love and can't believe how good it actually is. And that is Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island. Scooby-Doo is such a large part of my childhood because it was part of my mother's childhood. It's part of our parents' childhood. They grew up with Scooby-Doo. The reruns would come on and we grew up with it. We got all the spin-offs, you know, Scooby and Scrappy, the 13th Ghost series, things like Scooby-Doo and the Ghoul School, which I personally think is like one of my favorite Scooby-Doo movies of ye olden days. And so we have experienced a lot of Scooby-Doo in our time. But I think what's interesting about the older seasons is that we remember things about it, but not actually the quality, because I found, like, I was rewatching some episodes before I made this video, and a lot of them aren't that great, but we remember them because they're iconic. Like, I remember all the episodes where Scooby-Doo would hang out with the Harlem Globetrotters, because that was just, you know, it was cool. And the spin-offs with, like, where they would meet up with Batman and Robin or the Addams Family, because that was just cool. And it was interesting to see this the gang meet up with these other characters that you were so invested in, like when they would meet up with, like, Josie and the Pussycats. Oh my god, those were like my favorite ones, because, like, you know, Al and M looks exactly like Fred, so it was perfect. It always kind of Hanna-Barbera cartoons, how they would interact and things like that. You know, it's fun, it's iconic, but it's not actually good. But then we get the Scooby-Doo and Zombie Island movie, excuse me, Scooby-Doo on Zombie Island movie, which I think for a lot of people is viewed as the high point of Scooby-Doo, just in terms of quality, because it really was it is the Scooby-Doo that we remember as being good, because this is what we mostly remember, because it's the most recent. I remember when it first came out, I was about 6, and then it, like, rocked my mind just from being awesome, and then as I kept watching it, I really remember enjoying it. And then I haven't really watched it, sat down and watched it until I watched it for here, until I was about 13. That's the last time I remember vividly watching this movie. And so what I wanted to do in this retrospective is see what made it such an efficient film beyond just the twist ending and the darker tone, because we've had live action movies, 2 of them, and neither of them were good or in any way, like, relevant. Like, I could not remember, and I was like, a few years after this was when the first movie came out, and I don't remember ever being interested in seeing the live action movie at all. So let's talk about what makes this movie work. And I think one of the good things about it is that within the first 10 minutes of this film, you know exactly what's going on, because the setup is really good. Like, we begin with, like, the gang doing their typical, you know, masked ghost hunt, and, you know, it's some guy who's trying to, like, to protect something, the usual blah blah blah. And then we transition to showing us, like, where all the Scooby-Doo gang is doing now. Like, Daphne hosts her own show, Coast to Coast with Daphne Blake, and she's doing an interview talking about the incident that we just saw in flashback. We see that Fred is working with her as part of her one-man crew, which is like a shout out to all of us who know that Fred and Daphne are totally doing it. So that happens. And then we see when the interview lady talks about how, like, oh, now that Daphne's gonna go look for other ghosts, it's too bad the other gang won't be there. And then we see that she's sad, and then we see Scooby and Shaggy are working with Customs, getting food, but also eating all the food in Customs, which gets them fired. And Velma owns her own mystery bookstore, but she's not really feeling that, because she's the more detective one. And I like that they bring out different aspects of them. But what I think was most important about these first moments of scenes is that we realized that the group has split up because they got tired of chasing monsters that were really just dudes in masks, which is great, because that addresses an issue that we, the audience, have with the show, is that whatever mystery they do, it's just some guy in some mask, and that loses its appeal. So just like it makes us not care about Scooby-Doo, it makes the people in universe be like, let's just split up. But the other thing is that they didn't just split up, they split it up amicably. Like, you see that Daphne and everyone misses each other, which is a really key thing, because in the live action movie, from what I remember of it, was like the gang had split up, but they all hate each other. And who wants to start a movie that's about an ensemble group of friends and have it start off with them can't stand each other and fighting over who's really the leader and the plan? I mean, that's just so generic, and it ruins the fun of it, because you don't want to have half the movie be about them reconciling and whatever. No, within the first couple of minutes, you know, Fred gets the idea of bringing the gang back together because of what the woman says, and all of a sudden it's Daphne's birthday, They all come together. Fred calls everyone, and Mr. Ink is back in business. First 10 minutes, we are doing the movie. That's what people want to see. You don't want to spend all this time going through everyone's life. You got really key shots showing everyone what they're doing. Scooby-Doo and Shaggy are failures. Velma's unfulfilled. Daphne and Fred are successful but still miss their friends. They're gonna go look for ghosts because that's what Daphne's new segment's gonna be. And bam, plot done. You know, it's good storytelling of using every moment productively to give the audience what we need to connect to these characters. And I thought it was really well done. And then just to run through the plot really quickly, just so everyone's on the same page, but I'm sure most people who are watching this have seen this movie, but just to give you an idea, and there will be spoilers ahead. So one of the first things we get after this reunion of Mystery is this fantastic montage with this song, The Ghost Is Here, which is like, the music in this movie is really good. Like the cover of the Scooby-Doo theme song by Third Eye Blind and the two songs that they have in here are just really well done, and the montages that come with it. So this first montage is just like them going through a series of haunts in New Orleans, which of course they picked New Orleans, and it's just the same usual thing of rehashing that these mysteries are all turning out to be guys in masks. Again, giving us what we expect in a Scooby-Doo movie very early on, but very condensed. In like 2 minutes, we go through these things and we see that both Daphne and the gang and ourselves would not be happy with that. Because, again, this movie gets what's wrong, what's good with Scooby-Doo. So, then eventually they're talking about how they can't find a real ghost, and then they meet this woman named Lena, who talks about how she works at Moonscar Island as a cook and whatever the hell else she is at Moonscar Island. So they find out that that place is haunted by a real ghost. So they go on this ferry to go to Moonscar Island, and they meet this woman named Simone, and she tells them about the ghost of Morgan Moonscar, who's a pirate who laid treasure on the island, and his ghost haunts the place. And so you have scenes of like someone writing "Get out, beware" on the thing and on the kitchen wall, and Daphne's excited because it's like real ghost things are happening, and then Velma levitates, and Fred is being the cynic throughout the most of the movie, talking about it's all wires and special effects. And as it goes on, eventually they discover, well, mainly Scooby and Shaggy discover that there are zombies on the island when they encounter the zombie of Morgan Moonscar. And throughout the thing, Velma's finding clues of other pieces of things that are found here. Like she finds a mirror that belonged to like a Confederate officer and things like that. So as they go about, it gets dark. That's when everything starts to get really crazy, and they meet up with the zombies. And there's a great scene where, like, you know, Fred, they're looking to find Scooby and Shaggy because they had to kick Scooby out because he was harassing Simone's cats. And they go to find him, and Fred all the time is like, the zombie's not real, it's just a mask. And so he's trying to pull off the head, and all of a sudden he pulls the whole head off, and he's like, it's real. And all of a sudden they're like, holy shit. And that starts happening. And then, just to fast forward, they find out that Simone and Lena are the actual villains of the story. They are these cat creatures who have been draining people off the island in terms for immortality. After they made a pact with their cat gods to defeat Morgan Moonstar, who had come to their island and killed a lot of people. And because of the curse, they have to get rid of people every harvest moon, so Lena brought in the gang so they could get them. And so eventually, you know, the gang saves the day, and they run out of time, and therefore they just kind of, like, you know, vanish into, they're not vanish, but they kind of, like, you know, crumble up because they can't maintain their immortality, so they just crumble up altogether. And all the souls of people that they have collected over the years, they go wherever the hell souls go in these imaginary non-Christian worlds. So, you know, that's kind of the gist of the overall story. But what makes it good are the details in between that. So one of the first things that they address the issues that are wrong with the original material without being hateful towards the original material. The writers obviously knew a lot about the pros and cons of the series. Throughout the movie, you get peppers of improvement and shout outs to things that the original Scooby-Doo did. For example, when getting ready for dinner, Fred tries to decide if he should put on his iconic ascot. He's like, nah, that's perfect. That's all you need to address the fact that it was a corny little stylistic thing from the 70s, and it's corny, and let's get rid of it. It also addresses the repetition of the whole thing of like I said before, of the villains always being people in mass. They actually set up this to be an actual event. These are real monsters, and I think that was like the biggest thing for this film and some of the subsequent films, is that it wasn't just the usual Scooby-Doo hoax. It was a real monster, a real thing that the gang had to fight and solve. And I thought that was really good. That's what people wanted from Scooby-Doo after a certain point. Daphne and Velma actually feel like characters in this movie. Daphne pretty much would get screwed over in the original series, except for like the 13 Ghosts series, because in here she's more proactive. In this reboot, she's very active in the storyline. She never gets kidnapped, which she always used to do in the original. She never gets kidnapped. She doesn't fall into any traps. Actually, Fred is the one who falls into a trap in the series, in the movie, excuse me. And you know, she gets to like, you know, flip a zombie, so she's not like the damsel in distress character anymore. And she just, throughout the movie, she's the one who's searching for the ghost, looking for a ghost. She's much more proactive in her role. And Velma's the real detective. I feel like Velma sometimes would get like thrown into the side, but Velma in this movie is very much the best detective. She basically figures out everything, figures out the clues. That's actual detective work. And I like how they showed that she's not just a, like, because usually she gets taken as like the nerd girl, so she would of course own a bookstore, but she's not satisfied with the bookstore itself. She wants to go out and solve mysteries. And I think they really showed that Velma is more than just being the nerd. She is an adventurer. She wants to go out and discover things and do things, and that, you know, that's added layers to her character that I don't think they really would have before, because they always kind of made Fred the de facto leader because he was, you know, the manliest of the men. But I think they really showed that Velma's kind of more the leader because she's the one who figures stuff out and everyone else kind of brings their own thing to the group. Simone and Lena as villains are also a big reason why this twist thing and everything works, because Lena and Simone are both sympathetic and tragic. Like, their backstory is tragic because you find out that they were, when Morgan Moonstar came to their island, he was going to hide, like, treasure, and he, like, pushed all of the villagers who were, like, these kind of, like, pagan people into the bayou, and they were devoured by gators. And after seeing their friends get destroyed, Simone and Lena prayed to their cat gods for the ability to get revenge on the people that they loved on Morgan Moonstar. But they didn't realize that the curse would also make them immortal and have to drain other people's lives. So they didn't mean to become evil. They didn't mean that they were trying to get revenge for the people that they loved. And that's sad. But the fact of the matter is that they have become corrupted by that power, and that's what makes them evil. Because if you look at the people that they've killed since, they were innocent for the most part. You know, in one of the scenes you see that one of the women is pregnant. So they killed a pregnant woman to maintain their own immortality. So these are villains, but they have, you know, depth. They have dynamic. They have a dynamic to them that makes them more interesting than the usual, I'm just a villain trying to protect some money. You know, these are people who have, you know, had a real motive for becoming evil and have been corrupted by that force that's supposed to be meant for good, kind of, in the original way. And the other thing is that I really love is that you don't underestimate Scooby and Shaggy, because when the rest of the gang gets captured, because Simone and Lena made these magic wax dolls to control the gang to keep them from doing certain things, they didn't make one of Scooby and Shaggy because they felt that they were just so useless and it wouldn't matter. And it's such a great thing because we also think that. We think that Scooby and Shaggy are useless and wastes of time, and you don't have to worry about them. But that's the thing about it. Scooby and Shaggy are like almost inhumanely lucky, and they are good people. They're just, you know, kind of screw-ups. And so when you underestimate Scooby and Shaggy, you are underestimating kind of like the heart of the team, because that's what they are. They are the heart of the team, and they end up, you know, spoiling everything because they weren't controlled and they couldn't be controlled, and it's them that enables them to do certain things. I think that was just great because it's such a true thing of you underestimate them because we think they're stupid too. So I think for me, everything about this film was just really well thought out and self-reflective of the series of Scooby-Doo as a whole. You know, it moves quickly, it's never a dull point in the narrative, everything comes together. You see, and when you know the twist, you can notice good things about the animation, like how the zombies never actually hurt anyone. The most threatening zombie is Morgan Moonstar, and that makes sense because he's the most violent of the people that we know of. And it's just really well done. The animation is great. Like the one scene where when they're kind of melting because of the dolls are near the fire is just really excellent. It's a really good movie. I think nostalgia-wise, it's still good no matter what because it was a solid, well-written film that cared about the source material and cared about the fans and knew what we wanted to see, both when we were 6 and now when we're adults. So if you haven't seen it, check it out again. It's really good. Next, Scooby-Doo and the Witch's Ghost. Let's see if that holds up too.